6 months ago, getting a decent answer out of ChatGPT felt like a competitive advantage. You typed a question, got a smart response, and moved on. Today, that skill is becoming a baseline requirement rather than a differentiator. The underlying technology has transitioned to a new behavior. We are no longer dealing with systems that mathematically predict the next word in a sentence. The latest models decide the next physical action in a workflow. Think of prompting like sitting next to a student driver. You have to guide every turn and correct every mistake. An AI agent is a hired driver. You set the destination and sit in the back seat while it navigates the traffic and makes the step-by-step decisions on its own. While a few power users are now automating entire departments, most are still using AI as a glorified search bar. This mismatch, paying for high-level intelligence while using it for low-level manual tasks, creates a gap that is becoming increasingly costly for businesses to ignore. Closing that gap requires moving away from the habits of prompting and focusing on delegation. To understand how to delegate to an agent, we have to look at what's actually running under the hood. This diagram shows how a standard language model works. When you ask a question, it breaks your sentence into discrete tokens and uses probability to guess the most likely next word. But look at what happens when the answer is finished. The process hits a wall. Despite the complex math, the system is passive. It stops entirely and waits for you to type another prompt. An agent puts that same language model at the center, but surrounds it with 4 independent workers in a continuous loop: an analyst, a planner, an operator, and an auditor. One finds the pattern, one decides the plan, one does the work, and one checks the results. You can assign this system to review a week's worth of customer support tickets and email your leadership team a brief every Monday morning. The analyst reads the tickets, the planner decides what belongs in the brief, the operator writes the email, and the auditor checks it for logic before hitting send. Agents bypass the chatbot model entirely. They rely on an architectural structure that replicates a human operational team. The true advantage of this architecture becomes clear when things go wrong. In the 1950s, military strategist John Boyd studied a puzzle from the Korean War. American F-86 pilots consistently defeated Soviet aircraft that flew faster and climbed higher. Boyd discovered that the American pilots had better visibility from their cockpits, allowing them to adapt to changing conditions faster. He mapped this out in what we now call the OODA loop. This flowchart shows the 4 steps: observe, orient, decide, and act. Victory goes to whoever can cycle through these decisions the fastest. In the digital world, an AI agent runs its own OODA loop. Imagine you have an automated workflow that orders your groceries every Friday. If your usual item is out of stock and you unexpectedly have 6 friends coming for dinner, a standard workflow breaks. It throws an error and stops. An agent observes the error. It orients itself by checking your calendar and seeing the dinner party. It decides to find substitute ingredients, adjusts the quantities for 6 people, and acts to rebuild the entire order from scratch. Real autonomy relies on successfully navigating the failure of a strict predetermined script rather than perfectly following one. So, if agents are highly adaptable and capable of running their own loops, why do they still make massive mistakes in business settings? The answer is that an agent acts as a mirror. It formalizes and accelerates the quality of your own thinking. If you give it vague goals and sloppy directions, it will execute that bad thinking with extreme confidence. To maintain control, you can apply the ARR framework. If a task is autonomous, recurring, and reviewable, it is a candidate for an agent. If it needs live judgment, handle it yourself. For controlling how they operate, you use the GPS framework. This graphic compares a bad instruction with a good one. You cannot just say, "Summarize my emails." You have to clearly define the goal, establish the proof of what a good outcome looks like, and define the specific steps to get there. When an agent fails, it is rarely because the underlying model lacks intelligence. It almost always fails because the human operator lacked clarity. We are moving into a period where generating content, writing code, and running analyses will cost practically nothing. Output is becoming infinite. This creates a direct inverse reaction in the economy. As digital intelligence and raw output become incredibly cheap, human judgment and taste become scarce, expensive assets. The focus shifts toward having the precise standards and clarity to define exactly what good work looks like and knowing how to audit it. By delegating repetitive tasks to autonomous systems, human work is forced to become less mechanical and more strategic.